We appreciate you joining us, listeners, for today's edition of Elko Live. Today we're sitting down with Elko County School Superintendent CJ Anderson for the latest update in the transition that will be underway in time for the new school year at Flagview. Budget woes, which are ongoing, but which the Elko County School District is meeting head-on, as well as registration required for all future Elko County School District students. Welcome, CJ, and thanks for being on the program. We are pre-recording just to let listeners know a couple days early to accommodate busy schedules.
Yep. Thank you for having me, and thanks for accommodating.
Always, CJ, our Elko School Superintendent. So probably the first topic, as I mentioned, a lot of wheels in motion. I know you spoke at Government Affairs, hosted by the Elko Area Chamber on Monday, about the transition underway at Flagview. Will it still be called Intermediate School?
Yeah, at this point, we don't have an intention of changing a school name. That hasn't been like an itemized agenda or anything like that. So the way that works is we actually do have a policy that states how the naming of schools goes. And so, barring that showing up on an agenda, then you can expect that name will stay the same. The term intermediate school can be a little different from place to place. The first school I ever worked at as a teacher was a 5th, 6th grade intermediate campus back in Houston. But there are many different configurations of schools. And so, honestly, amidst everything that we've been doing, the name of the school is not really a huge priority for me. It's still Flagview. It's going to have 6th graders next year. And I feel like that's really more important is the good work that's going to be going on there rather than the name of the school. So, but at this point, to answer your question directly, we don't have a plan to change the name. I know at a certain point when we were talking about it, about kind of the future of Flagview, I believe I threw in just like another term potentially, but it wasn't like a full-fledged plan for changing the name of the school or anything like that.
It's not sticking. So what is the projected enrollment? This is going to be city-wide 6th graders all at one campus, again, spinning off the 5th graders, keeping them back, and not sending anybody because they're going to be in place. We want to be very clear about this. But we'll have 5th graders on the campuses where they began their elementary school careers.
Yeah. And I think sometimes when we, because Flagview is being reduced to 6th grade, we keep thinking about this like transition of Flagview. Really, it's a transition of the K-6 landscape of the city of Elko. And so, yeah, all 4 of our elementary schools are also going to experience a change, right? Because they are adding teachers. They are adding more students to their student body because they are not, pushing a grade level out as they bring a new grade level in. So really, we have 5 schools in the city of Elko they're going to be look a little different next year than they do this year. Probably
if it's in keeping with what's been happening historically, maybe Southside, is that going to be problematic? Because they're a bit crowded already, right, CJ?
Schools are crowded to different degrees, but we wouldn't have made this adjustment if we didn't have the room for the students at the schools. So all of the schools have the space, and it's all very usable space right now. There'll be a little bit of, a couple of places where we have to do a kind of some little bit of facelifting to a modular or something like that over the summer, but nothing that is either a big expense or something that we can't just do in-house with our own maintenance personnel and journeymen and custodians and things like that.
Now, I think I lost my question too about enrollment. How many 6th graders do you think we'll have at Flagview?
Catching me off guard with that number.
Sorry.
No, you're okay. I feel pretty confident in saying right now the enrollment at Flagview is somewhere between 300 and 400 kids per grade level. So, the current 5th graders are the ones that will be moving up to 6th grade, and so we shouldn't see a whole lot of change there from who is in 5th grade right now to who will be in 6th grade next year. So, somewhere in the 300 to 400 range. I'd be happy to share that number back at some point, but I feel pretty good about that number.
All right, so we can bring that back. And then also, you talked about busing at Government Affairs, and did you want to explain that too?
Yeah, sure. And I think this was maybe shared in a board meeting, but there was some of the kind of pushback against the concept was this was going to potentially create different, an additional expense on the district because of transportation And the reality is actually by doing this, we are going to be able to reduce one route next year. So that actually will result in, that's another savings. When I was kind of proposing this change, there were some things that I felt really good about as far as what would calculate up to a certain number of savings. And then I sort of had this other, plus mark next to the number, right? So we ended up at whatever plus, and the plus was to indicate that there are these other ancillary little bits of savings that are unknown or uncalculable at this time, depending on a lot of things, on energy costs, and at that point we had no idea what was going to be happening in Iran, so I wouldn't have known what to say about diesel costs, right? And so there's all these things that are not really super predictable. But anyway, with transportation, we are able to reduce one route because of the consolidation of these kids into the elementary schools. But by way of just like a quick understanding of how transportation has worked for most kids at Flagview, is the kids who are eligible to ride a bus to go to Flagview were typically riding in a bus with elementary school kids already. And so they were getting, the elementary age kids were getting dropped off at their elementary school, and then the Flagview kids were remaining on the bus and then going on to Flagview. It wasn't separate routes for all these kids for Flagview or the elementary. A lot of them were just combined. Which is not unlike what we do out in some of our other outlying communities. Like I always use Wells as a frame of reference because I was there, but you have kids from all grade levels in Wells. You're not going to send a separate bus out to Clover Valley, for example, for high school kids or for elementary kids. They're all going to the same places, picking up kids at the same stops. And so you do what is most efficient, and as long as you feel like it makes sense. And so there will not be an added burden on transportation next year. It really won't make a big difference from that standpoint.
And then, of course, unless you have anything to add on the Flagview topic, how are teachers and staff going to be settled in? I guess they'll be following the fifth grade students, but I'll just let you explain that, because I know that was a lot of the concern and the sense of upheaval that was going on over the last few months.
Yeah, thank you. So that is relevant to Flagview as well, right? A lot of the concern around the topic was because people don't totally understand what certain terminology means. And so we talked about reduction in positions, and what a lot of people equate that to is people losing their jobs. And that was never the case, not for our contracted employees anyway. We have so many positions in our district that annually are filled by either long-term substitutes or critical needs teachers, and all of those they're not contracted employees with our district. They're at-will positions, at least in the case of the long-term subs. And then with the critical needs people, we do contract them, but it's a year-to-year thing. There's no expectation of employment beyond that year. So what we knew was even moving all these teachers from Flagview that would need to go somewhere. Obviously, we'd be creating positions at other schools, and so a lot of people thought, oh, well, they'll just go to those jobs, and then just having openings at other campuses, all because of retirements, because of resignations, because of having long-term subs there, having critical needs teachers. The way this process works every year is whenever we get to about March or April, really February or March, we open all those positions anyway. So every long-term sub job, every critical needs job, every retirement resignation, we post those jobs for anyone and everyone to apply to. What was a little different this year was to make sure that we left space for the people who were going to be inconvenienced or relocated in some form or fashion. We didn't start hiring for those other jobs that we've known about for months. We left those unfilled to make space for people who were going to be displaced. And so what we immediately did was, as soon as that decision was made about Flagview, we were able to let those teachers start to engage in that annual process that we have, which is to put your name on a transfer list, to interview with the principals at those different sites, and to find what your new home was going to be. I know it was kind of a sad parting for a lot of them to leave their family, because when you work at a school, especially for years after years, you do form bonds and relationships with people, and that's beautiful. But things change, and families, kids go off to college and those things happen, right? But these folks have, for the most part, last update I got just a couple days ago was the vast majority. Maybe there's a couple kind of hangers on still that haven't like totally solidified where they're going to be, but the majority of people within a couple of weeks had found their new home already for next year, and then other people used it as an opportunity to say, well, maybe I want to go do something at the secondary level, or maybe I want to change the content I'm teaching, and so it provided that opportunity for people as well. So I keep telling people, and it's important to know that we haven't actually done anything super outside the norm of our standard processes around this time of year. It's just been a little bit larger scale because we did have to reduce positions because our enrollment was too low for the number of staff we had, and we were making that change with Flagview. But the processes are all still the same. The other element that I have had a bunch of people come up to me and say, well, I don't think that's very fair, is regarding where those fifth grade teachers would be able to go. I think some people thought that, well, if they were a fifth grade teacher and you created a fifth grade job at an elementary school, that the fifth grade jobs would go to those fifth grade teachers. And unfortunately, that's not how that works. So we have negotiated agreements with our unions that dictate exactly how the transfer list works, that dictate exactly how reductions in force work.
Meaning if someone else is in line first from that campus.
Correct,
okay,
yeah.
Okay.
Seniority can be a factor. The level of evaluation of that teacher can be a factor. So there are state statutes that govern how some of those things are done, and then there are local negotiated agreements that say how those things are done. So what we promised was that for all of those teachers, we would have more than enough available jobs for them. It was never, we will have you in a fifth grade job somewhere else, because that's not a promise that gets made to any teacher any year ever. At a campus, a principal has a bunch of, let's just say I have 30 teachers and I have 30 classrooms for those teachers. As a principal, I have 30 teachers that are certified to teach elementary school. And depending on the makeup of teams that I have, or depending on someone's desire to change a grade level, or depending on personalities that exist among the teaching staff, there are any number of reasons why from one year to another, this teacher may be teaching fourth grade, then this one may be, and then the next year they're teaching third grade, and then maybe they're there for 3 years and then they're back to fourth grade. Like, that can happen so differently, and nobody in our district is certified to teach fifth grade. That's not a certification that exists in Nevada. There is an elementary education certification, and all of our teachers who teach elementary school are certified for elementary school. Now, people have preferences, right? It's like, well, I can't teach kindergarten. That's not my cup of tea. That's not my personality. That's not my preference. And the reality is, well, that may be the job that's available for you next year. So what we promised were more than enough jobs, because we knew between the long-term subs, between the critical needs teachers, between the resignations, et cetera, that there would certainly be enough, and that's borne out to be true. And so that's just kind of where we are right now.
Talking with our superintendent of Elko County School District, CJ Anderson. Just one more question on the topic, and then we're going to shift right into the reason for these changes, and that would be budget. But did want to talk about the autonomy of the campuses. These aren't decisions that were made at central office. I mean, you have a lot of input from the individual schools, right, CJ?
Yes. Can you clarify your question for me?
Well, for example, when you're talking about where teachers will go into what classrooms.
Yeah, 100%. So we do not get involved in the hiring of teachers at specific schools. This is, again, where this just kind of, even though it is a different situation, the processes are still the same. When a job is posted, or when someone is applying for an internal transfer or whatever, the process is that candidate, that teacher, would interview with the principal from that campus, and if that principal feels like they're a good fit for their culture, for the team that they're trying to, like, maybe they have a team of fourth grade teachers, and I already have someone that's really strong this way and someone that's really strong this way. I'm looking for someone who can complement that team, and I'm looking for the right fit for that. I think with anyone who's ever doing hiring, you're looking for the right fit. You would hope that all of your candidates are qualified, right? So then it becomes about personality, about fit, about temperament, about other strengths that they bring that maybe you're lacking on a team, and that's just good leadership, is bringing a team together that's going to be effective collectively.
Thank you, CJ, our school superintendent. And then this next topic again, the status of the budget. You also said at Government Affairs Monday, I believe the figure was it $15 million that you've been able to resolve in time for next year's spending plan?
Yeah, and with everything being so fluid, I'm always very hesitant to say exactly where we're going to be. Right now, where we are in our process is we have a tentative budget for next year. And so throughout this year, we made as many cuts as we felt like we could reasonably and kind of responsibly make mid-year. That's really tough to do when somewhere in the mid 70 to mid 80% of your budget is all wrapped up in salaries and benefits of staff. By the time we get to December and we're having these conversations, you're not laying a bunch of people off in December. You've got those contracts in place, you've got your staff in place, and so we did about as much as we could, apart from doing a reduction in force mid-year. But this whole spring, we've been looking at, okay, so for next year, we can't find ourselves in that same scenario. We can't be, 7% heavy on staffing. We have to right size that back to what our student population is. And so we've been able to make a lot of those adjustments. So while we were only able to do so much for this year, because there's only so much eligible to kind of be cut from between December and June, we have a lot more flexibility to do preparations for next year. And so that's where a lot of these staffing reductions came into place. It wasn't to reduce people presently, it was making adjustments for going into next school year. So, that's where some of these figures that we've seen in different presentations, like we'd reduce 20 elementary positions in our district, right? And those are 20, not because we're just trying to hit a number, like that's not what that's about. Those 20 positions came from saying, this is how many students we have at this school, and this is how many teachers we have. And when you have that, this is what the class sizes equate to. Nope, class sizes don't need to be that small. That's a little too small. Let's pull a teacher away from that, and that increases it to this. Okay, that's an acceptable number. And we kind of went like literally through school by school, classroom by classroom, making sure that we have the right numbers. Obviously, the fewer the kids, the better in a classroom, but do that too much and now you're financially being irresponsible. And so we went through and did that process. It was a little easier from an elementary standpoint to do that. The high school is a little more challenging, and secondary is a little more challenging because there is autonomy and registration for what you want to take and what class you're going to be in and which elective you're going to take and all that. And so those kind of need to shake out a little bit at the high school level for us to know how many positions can be reduced at the secondary level. And then there's the conversation around 0 hours, which is relevant to high school because, again, 0 hours are only necessitated when the student registrations are so many that we can't fit them all in the other 6 periods of the day for that teacher, so we need to do a 0 hour. But we're just being a little more selective about those, and those decisions are all being made as in real time as those registrations happen and as we find out about enrollments.
So along the lines of the budget, you were able to shave some savings in the areas of critical needs employees or the subs, the long-term subs, and that was how you were able to preserve some of these positions, right, and to actually give them to the full-time employees.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And we are very grateful for the long-term subs. We're very grateful for the critical needs teachers. It's a mutually beneficial relationship, right? Because critical needs teachers are folks who they were eligible to retire, and why wouldn't you when you are? But like, hey, there's this other opportunity, and so they were able to benefit from that for a time. And for long-term subs, there's flexibility there. There's an opportunity to gain your certification while you're working. Like there are things that were good for them and were good for us. But in a situation where you do have too many employees based on your student enrollment, then those are going to be the first to go, because those are positions that get filled after all the dust settles everywhere else. And again, that is a normal annual process. Those critical needs teachers and long-term subs, those positions were never solidified at another school until about mid to late July, sometimes even going into August. You always leave as much time and room as you can, as you possibly can, to hire a certified teacher, whether that's someone coming right out of college or someone who moved into town or someone who used to teach and was home with their kids for a few years and now they're back into the workforce. Like, there's any number of reasons why we leave those open, but the priority is always to have full-time certified teachers. And then, when we can't fill all the positions that way, then we start looking to other opportunities. So the inverse is true. When it's time to start trimming, you trim from those areas first, making room to keep your staff that you're going to have long term.
So also during Monday's Government Affairs, CJ, you talked about declining enrollment as being really the primary driver behind these budget woes. Of course, there's state funding formula issues, but that's why this next topic is so important, and that is a registration. But maybe segue that with the reality of enrollment that we have right now, declining enrollment. Have you been able to pin that down?
Yeah, so pin it down, no. I wish I could solve a national issue. And make no mistake, this is not an Elko problem. This is an everywhere problem. There are pretty much every district in our state, barring a couple that are very isolated and very unique. Pretty much every district in our state is experiencing declining enrollment. And when I talk to superintendents from around the region and from around the country, it's the same. There's just a lot more. It's the nature of our society and our technology and everything now. There are many options for how to get education, and we sincerely wish and hope that people will choose public school. I think there's a lot of value to public school, but no, I haven't pinned it down per se. But the reality of the enrollment and why that's important is because in Nevada, as is the case in many states, funding is tied to enrollment. It's not tied to attendance necessarily, but it's tied to enrollment. And so what that means is there is a certain number of dollars that we get for each child that is enrolled, each student that is enrolled in our schools. And so when a student leaves our schools, we no longer get the funding for that student. And that's especially challenging in the way our current funding formula is set up, which you brought up, and that is that we don't get to, get through the rest of the year with the funding for that kid. They do what's called a true up every quarter. And the true up means they check our enrollment again. And if we were at, let's just say 9,500, and then the next time they do a true up and that number is now 9,400, they're going to take 100 students per pupil allocation away from us, which in our case equates to a lot of money because it's 11,000 something per student. So we're looking at $1 million when we lose 100 kids. And that's not something we can adjust to in real time. We get that money taken away from us in November or in January or whenever the true up happens, and you are left to kind of figure out how to get through the year until you have an opportunity to change staffing again, because we don't have 30% of our budget in discretionary expenditures. That's not how our general fund works.
And this is something that came up too during a recent county commission meeting, CJ, in which there was a presentation by the principal of one of the charter schools. We have two very successful charter schools in Elko. And I think in some ways the county commission, in their eagerness to support charter schools, they somehow slight, public school, because they suggest that, well, the charter schools are so successful, we should give them money so that they can grow some more. Essentially, the principal of the charter school said, no, thank you, we like the size that we are. I mean, it does matter when you can have smaller class sizes and that there are parents who are engaged in their child's education and they're all congregated in one campus.
Yeah, I mean, every campus has its philosophy. Every campus has its strengths, its weaknesses, and I think that I'm delighted for anywhere where success is happening and students are benefiting and they're gaining a good education. That's wonderful. Whether that's happening at a charter school, whether that's happening through homeschool, or whether that's happening within our schools, those are all. That's great for those students.
And parents are trying to do the best they can, CJ.
100%. I have yet to, it is my opinion that I have yet to meet a parent who doesn't care about their child and who doesn't want the best for them, even if sometimes we can disagree about the way they're going about that. Parents care for their kids and want the best for their kids. And so, it does not surprise me that was, I didn't see the meeting you're talking about, but it doesn't surprise me that that's the charter principal's take on that. Ashley.
Yes, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I know Ashley.
And she doesn't mind,
no,
I'm sure.
Yeah, she's doing a phenomenal job over there. That's not up for debate. And what I think is probably true is that when you're able to work and think of it in terms of like making cookies in small batch, you have a lot of control over what's happening. You have a lot of
you can put the flourishes on them.
You can do a lot of things, right? When you have to amp that up to a bigger level, the scalability is true in most industries. It's tougher to scale things up and keep things exactly the way you want them. And so hopefully this doesn't come across as making an excuse, but we are very interested in giving the best education we can to our students, and I do not. I do not malign any education entity, and I do not think that there's a problem with kids having, as long as they're having success. Because the reality is, right now, eventually they make it to us anyway. They're coming to our high schools. Sometimes they're coming to our middle schools. Sometimes they're kind of bouncing back and forth depending on family circumstances. So the important thing is that our students are in our community are being well educated and well prepared for the future, regardless of where that's occurring.
Right. We don't have magnet schools yet. So we're talking about elementary grades, and then, as you said, eventually joining the general high school population. Well, CJ, again, there's just so much to be proud of. Spring is a time of celebration, graduation, achievement throughout the Elko County School District. There have just been some outstanding accomplishments in classrooms, on campuses, and in communities, and our schools are really at the heart of this accomplishment.
Yeah, for sure. And it takes everybody, right? It takes the parents, it takes the kids, it takes the teachers, it takes our community partners and businesses who endorse and give donations and in-kind work. And there's all these things that go to celebrating our students and giving them opportunity. I mean, I can't even rattle off all the amazing things that are happening right now, but we just had FCCLA from 3 different schools do so phenomenally at the state level and qualify for nationals. The regional choir festival is happening at Elko High like right now while we're recording this. Some of our choir students are going off to All-State next week. You've got spring sports in full swing. You've got the STEM fair that just happened that was very successful and kids did an amazing job. Last night I was at the Elko County School District Writers Festival, and we got to hear samplings of all the kids writing, and those were kids from all across our district. I think every school was named in awards that were given out, and that includes our Mound Valley and Ruby Valley and our little remote schools that we have across our district. It's
high school theaters opening.
Yeah, high school theaters got Charlie and the Chocolate Factory coming here soon. There is no shortage of incredible things happening in our district, and that's that we want that to persist, right? Like I'm up at central office dealing with the budget problems and banging my head against the wall and working with people and doing everything I can to try to get that in a good spot and not interrupt these kids' opportunities. Like, they should still be able to do all of these things, and it's everything we can do to make sure they still have access to high quality curriculum, to high quality staff, and to all these opportunities so they can be successful and have a great year. And we're getting close to graduation. That'll be a joyous time as well. Make no mistake, there are so many incredible things happening in our schools, and hopefully, financial issues and enrollment changes and things like that, those should never have kids feeling impacted. Like, that's stuff for adults to deal with, and our kids need to be able to benefit from their education.
CJ Anderson, our guest today, Elko County School Superintendent. We will meet again in the coming month, and we'll talk more about some of those successful students and where they're headed. There's just a lot to look forward to. Hope we got to everything you needed to today, CJ. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Lori.